Happy Friday, friends. On today's Locked On NHL, we're looking at how the two newest head coaches are faring so far, the latest in the Giroux to Colorado rumors, some Heritage Classic jersey snap judgments, and we've got a look ahead to the full weekend slate of games.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Friday edition of Locked On NHL. I'm Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm on Twitter at @rmiriam. I'm here with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find him on Twitter at IceWarsNYI versus NYR. Gil, how we doing this Friday?
We are doing well. How are you? Happy Friday.
Same to you. Yeah, just the Olympics are starting to wrap up and we're heading into trade deadline season in the NHL. So a lot going on in hockey right now.
Yeah, it's a fun time of year, and the Olympic break that wasn't is almost over as far as the NHL is concerned. But a lot of games because of all the postponements, and now we're starting to see the playoff picture come into a little more focus and who the buyers and sellers are going to be at the trade deadline.
Absolutely. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. You can also watch us over on YouTube. So, before we get into how our new coaches are faring so far, we did get some updates from international hockey sources that the World Juniors are going to be rescheduled for this summer in August in Edmonton and Red Deer. So, we'll get at least a chance to see some of those prospects this summer.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. And it's also good for the kids. I mean, to have the World Juniors interrupted the way it was and all the health issues with COVID, it to give them the chance to have that experience, to showcase their skills against some of the other best young players from around the world. It is always a great tournament, and it gives hockey fans something to focus on in August, which is also great.
Yeah, I think the one interesting twist to it is that they're maintaining age appropriate eligibility from when the tournament was supposed to take place, but it is taking place after the draft. So will a Shane Wright want to participate at that point? I don't know,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, certainly you don't want to risk injury or anything like that. So yeah, there is that factor to it. Uh, you know, uh, I would tend to think most modern athletes would be cautious about that.
Mhm. So we'll see how that plays out in terms of who's actually on the rosters come next summer. But glad they're rescheduling that as well as the U18 women's tournament and some of the lower tier tournaments as well. And that we're not going to miss them entirely. But, speaking of Edmonton, where that World Juniors is going to take place, they have one of our two newest NHL coaches in Jay Woodcroft, who is off to a pretty good start, going 4-0. The Oilers have won against the Ducks, the Kings, the Sharks, and your Islanders.
And they look good doing it against my Islanders too. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations where a lot of the time you get the new coach and there is a push that teams get, but you can't do better than 4 in a row. And look, with Edmonton, we always knew the talent was there. That was never the issue. The issue was sort of uh, the system that they were or were not playing, and how the players were responding to the coaching. So the palate has been cleansed. And now the question is, how long can they keep up this higher level of play?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look at these four games, they've won all of them by a 2-goal margin or higher, which is really good. In their last game against Anaheim, they were down 2 goals and wound up winning 7-2, which is pretty great. And I think one of the other things that's been good about this 4-game stretch for the Oilers is that they're getting really distributed scoring. They've had 11 different goal scorers over those 4 games. Draisaitl and Zach Hyman leading with 3 goals each, but you have contributions from Darnell Nurse, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Kyler Yamamoto, Cody Ceci even has a goal
Yep.
in this stretch. So I think, it's a really good sign that they're getting contributions from throughout the lineup and that they're getting semi-decent goaltending during this stretch. It's still not great, but it's solid enough for them to be winning these games. And I
Exactly.
think it feels like these guys are more bought in now.
Yeah, and that makes a big difference. And look, secondary scoring or scoring from not there's 3 or 4 star players at the top of the Edmonton lineup, when they slump, that's very often part of the issue. So seeing them getting distributed scoring is a big reason for being able to win these hockey games. And look, like I said, we know the talent is there. This is a team that should be winning a lot of hockey games.
They absolutely should. And I know Leon Draisaitl is very, very good, but it's very interesting to me that he is the one in the Rocket Richard sweepstakes, I guess, right now, as opposed to Connor McDavid, that he's not even in the top 5 right now. He's close, but he's not there.
No, he's not there, but Draisaitl's been on fire. So,
Mhm.
it's going to be a fun race down the stretch right now. I mean, there's a lot of players who are right on the cusp and fighting for that Rocket Richard trophy. You got Draisaitl, Austin Matthews, Chris Kreider, Alex Ovechkin, like, of course, and then DeBrincat with Chicago. So what we've got right now is a really tight race for the Rocket Richard Trophy. I mean, 6 goals separating the top 5 players, and it should be a really interesting race as we head down the stretch of this season.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about the other new coach in the NHL right now is Martin St. Louis in Montreal. He got his first win with a 3-2 overtime win versus the St. Louis Blues. That was his first win as a head coach, and he had lost his first 3 games in that stretch, but it ended a 10-game losing streak for Montreal, so it was good to see him get that first W under his belt.
No question. And look, this has been a very difficult season for the Canadiens. I mean, no one expected them to have only 9 wins here as we head into the last week in February, just about. So to get that, end that losing streak, and for St. Louis to get that first win as a coach. And remember, he has no substantial professional or even junior coaching experience. I think his only coaching experience has been at Pee Wee level. So to get that first win has to feel really good. And hopefully Montreal, from their standpoint, can start building a little something down the stretch to give the team a little hope as to what they may have going forward.
And I think one of those players that's been benefiting from the coaching change is Cole Caufield. He scored the last second tying goal to force overtime in that game and the overtime winner. He has 4 goals in 4 games under Martin St. Louis. And what a turnaround for him, because prior to that, he had a goal and 7 assists in 30 games played for the season. So it seems like, based on what guys have been saying and what he's saying, that Martin St. Louis is like a player's guy, right? He's gonna be. That's the only way for him to approach this, given his lack of experience. And I think that in turn has at least given some of the guys on the Habs the freedom to just do what they do best, and that know that they're going to be supported and that they're not locked into a particular framework, that they have freedom to be themselves out there on the ice. And I think that only breeds confidence.
Absolutely. And as long as they can continue to be cohesive and sort of be on the same page, that kind of strategy could work and maximize the skills of the players when they're out there on the ice.
For sure. And it'll be interesting to see if a turnaround is something that Habs fans want to see, given the position in the tankathon going on out there right now. But I think overall, winning is always better. That is my opinion, is that winning is always better than losing. And that, you know, unless you're talking about a generational talent, and there's some argument about Shane Wright in terms of his long-term prospects right now, but it's not a Connor McDavid. That is
Right.
for sure. And so in this particular draft, which is maybe slightly weaker than the next year's drafts in 2023 in terms of overall evaluation at this point, but I don't think there's gonna be a huge difference in what the Habs are gonna get, and I think winning will do better for the group that's there and who is carrying over into the next season.
Yeah, you always want to build a culture if you can help it. And with the lottery, even if you tank, you're not guaranteed that number one overall spot anyway. So I think in the long run, like you said, unless there is a Mario Lemieux or a Connor McDavid waiting for you, you're better off trying to build a winning culture around your organization.
Exactly. Well, we will be talking a little bit about that in the next segment related to my Philadelphia Flyers, but first we're gonna hear from our friends at Built Bar.
Yes, indeed. We are going to hear about Built Bar. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. And Puffs are a fan favorite. Listen to these incredible flavors: yummy, cinnamony, churro, coconut marshmallow, and banana cream pie. I mean, banana cream pie, so good. These are going to be your new favorite. And all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Most contain just 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but they pack 17 grams of protein. Now compare that to a candy bar. Usually you have 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. And at Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it delicious first, then they figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how, but they pull it off every time. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com.
Thanks again for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Olympic Hockey Daily, presented by Locked On NHL. It's a bonus podcast covering all the action in Beijing. I am there and have been reporting on the Olympic hockey tournaments this whole time. And you can find it in this very Locked On NHL podcast feed, which is free and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Keep up the good work. You guys are doing great.
It's been a ton of fun. You should check out the post women's gold medal episode with Erica Ayala, direct from Beijing. Lots of great analysis about why Canada won that gold medal and reclaimed it, so they say, and what it means for the women's game moving forward. All right, so we have a few interesting things going on around the league. First off, we had the return of Jack Eichel on Wednesday night for the Vegas Golden Knights. Did not go well for them overall. They lost to the Colorado Avalanche 2-0, but obviously I don't think anybody expected, huge impact from Eichel having been his first game back in well over a year, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're Vegas right now, you get Jack Eichel back into the lineup, and you're building him up for the playoffs more than anything. For the stretch drive and for the playoffs, and to expect him to hit the ground running at full speed and full strength after a year off is really not the point. So to me, the most important thing is to just get him back into game shape, get him acclimated to the system, to his teammates, and when it counts most in the postseason, if he's something close to the full Jack Eichel that we've seen so far, Vegas will benefit big time.
And even if he isn't, and he's still contributing at 75%, 75% of Jack Eichel is better than a lot of other guys around this league. And with a team that's as strong as Vegas has been, I think that it was a really good move for them to make this trade. And, time will tell, obviously, but I think that especially with Stone out, I think that this is a really good move and that he'll just continue to improve from there.
Absolutely, and the best thing for Jack Eichel is he doesn't have to carry the team himself. There is, as you mentioned, so much talent up and down that lineup. So, the pressure that would usually be on Eichel if he was the guy, it's not quite the same here.
Exactly. So at the other end of the spectrum are the teams in the Tankathon that we talked about in the last segment when we were talking about Montreal. And one of those teams is sadly my Philadelphia Flyers. And man, this has been a rough few weeks, I think, for everybody in Flyers land. And, there have been discussions on this show, and of course on the Avalanche show on this network about Giroux and what, he could bring to a team and, why this trade is going to be happening, it seems. And this week, Claude Giroux appeared in front of the Flyers media and took some questions, and the way that went, it was such a heartbreaking thing, I think, for all of us, because it did sound as though, even though he was saying in words, "Oh, we haven't talked about it yet," haven't talked to Chuck Fletcher about it. We haven't made any specific plans, but he said the words, "It's been an honor to play for the Flyers all of these years." And it just had such a sense of resignation to it and finality to it. And, the deadline is still several weeks away, and Giroux is approaching his 1,000th NHL game. And the trade deadline gap between that 1,000th game is just a few days. And so it's just going to be this overwhelming emotional march to the trade deadline for us.
No doubt, and look, Claude Giroux, if he does leave Philadelphia, that's the end of an era for the Flyers, and
Hmm.
I mean, again, he hasn't left yet. Nothing is etched in stone, but like you said, it sounds like he's accepted the fact that his time in Philly is ending. Where would you put his legacy as far as his place in Flyers and NHL history?
Oh God. I mean, top five for sure. No question. And especially having been drafted by the Flyers in that, infamous draft where Bobby Clark like didn't know who he was or who he was picking when he got up to the podium. But, he has drafted, developed, excelled, became captain through all of these years. And he's got the second most points for the Flyers to Bobby Clark, and that's legendary, right? So I think his contributions on and off the ice have been remarkable to this team. He's an amazing leader, and I think that like two of the main things that I appreciate about him is his dry sense of humor, which most people wouldn't understand. But I think a lot of people saw a little bit of it when he was All-Star Game MVP, and that he just, when asked, did he miss having Alex Ovechkin at the All-Star game, he was like, no. He's just blunt and direct, but I love pretty much everything about him, and he's one of the hardest working people you will see in hockey, and he knows what he can and cannot do and utilizes his skills to the best of his ability. When they moved him out to wing, I think that rejuvenated his on ice performance, and he's such a dynamic playmaker. He's going to make anybody look good out there. And so whoever gets him is getting just a real stand up guy that is going to work his butt off for your team.
And at the trade deadline, that you'll gain experience, scoring, leadership. It's a good combination to add a player like that.
Yeah. As far as return goes, I think my Locked On Flyers co-host and I slightly disagree on what we want. I would prefer that first round pick, a high-end prospect. We're not going to get the number 1 or number 2 prospect for a team just because it's a rental and that cost is too high, but definitely a top 5 prospect in a team system. And I would like an actual body in return that can play hockey now because the Flyers are so depleted, and especially with Claude Giroux's amazing face-off skills, you need somebody who's going to be able to take some face-offs
Right.
for this team for the remainder of the season, and preferably somebody that's low cost with either an expiring contract or maybe only has 1 year left on their deal at this point. So that's what I'm looking for. I think Russ Cohen, who's my Locked On Flyers co-host, he wants an additional prospect or an additional pick.
Well, if you can get it, that's a great thing.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know. As a neutral observer, what do you think he demands in return?
Ah, boy. I think it's going to come down to how desperate things are at the trade deadline. If there's a bidding war, if, one team feels like they must land Claude Giroux because, the team that they're battling for a spot just made a big trade also, you might be able to squeeze that extra that extra prospect out, but it's really going to be like market forces are going to determine that at the last minute.
Well, the other thing too is the no move clause. So if Claude Giroux says I'm only willing to go to these 2-3 teams, then that's kind of the negotiating bucket that
Yeah.
Chuck Fletcher is in. But at the same time, I think that I don't think he's going to take a terrible deal either.
Oh, no.
Now, he may pick a prospect that Flyers fans in general aren't as keen on. There's like for Colorado, Newhook is off the table. I mean, that's a ridiculous
Right.
supposition there. But could we get a Drew Hellison or a Sean Behrens, a Martin Kaut? Maybe. So, and there are some significant upsides to those guys as well. There's been talk of maybe JT Compher or Tyson Yost coming over. Not too thrilled about either of those options, but at least Jost can take faceoffs and he wins a lot of them. So there is that. Minnesota and St. Louis are the other 2 teams out there, which I'm less interested in what they have to offer. But the only difference is that Minnesota has their first round pick from this year, and Colorado, it would be a 2023 first rounder. So there's pros and cons to both of those as well.
Yeah, some tough decisions ahead, but important decisions for the Philadelphia Flyers' future. No question about that.
Well, I wonder if there's odds on where Claude Giroux ends up that you could bet on. And if there are, I would look for them on BetOnline. Football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both the pro and college hoops games. From all the latest odds, totals, player performances, props to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to all the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Gil. So before we get to the weekend ahead of games, just taking a quick look at the Locked On NHL Power Rankings that they talked about on yesterday's show. But man, I just feel like I need to say that I do not understand why the Avalanche are not in the #1 slot.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I mean, Wow, they are playing some outstanding hockey. But, I think part of it is a lot of the voters may be reluctant to change from where they were. And it's like you're number one until you're proven not to be. Uh,
That's fair.
yeah, I mean that's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, I also think the Lightning are a little bit high because I feel like you have your Avalanche, Panthers, Canes are your top 3, and then I would put the Lightning, Leafs, and Wild in the next tier, and then your Pens, Rangers, Flames, and that's like your top 10.
Yeah, that fits. But when you're the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions, you're going to get some votes just on reputation alone.
That's true, and they always seem to be able to turn things on in the playoffs, so never count out the Lightning. Now, looking ahead to this weekend slate of games, it is a holiday weekend, President's Weekend, so there's, I think, a lot more games than we would have guessed, especially with all the rescheduling that happened for the COVID games that were canceled. So lots of games on the schedule if you want to watch some NHL hockey on this weekend. Friday, I think, the top game, of course, is going to be Panthers at Wild, right?
Yeah, I mean there's two of your top tier teams right there, so it should be a good one in Minnesota. And look, the Panthers to me are always fun to watch. I enjoy just their style of play and the skill that they demonstrate on a consistent basis. So tough road game in Minnesota should be a good one.
And I think the other game that maybe you want to check out is the LA Kings at Vegas Golden Knights. You can continue your Jack Eichel watch and see how he's doing. There's a couple opportunities actually to watch him play this weekend. We'll talk about the other one in Sunday's slate. But I think that maybe if you're looking for a third game to watch, it would be Panthers at Wild.
Yep. Panthers at Wild would definitely be my first choice, and then Vegas, LA.
On Saturday, I think what I'm most interested in is Edmonton at Winnipeg because you're looking at, can Edmonton get a 5th win in a row under their new coach, and can they continue their scoring the way they have been?
Yeah, they are a team to watch, and Winnipeg still trying to get their consistency back and get back into a playoff spot.
And then I think the other game I'm tuning into on Saturday is St. Louis at Toronto. St. Louis has been maybe not as strong as they've wanted to be this season, but I think a matchup against Toronto is going to be a good test for them to see if they can, you know, kick things up a notch.
Yeah, and with St. Louis, it's about consistency. They need to be a little more consistent. Losing to Montreal last night, certainly they've got to be smarting a little bit after that and hoping to bounce back. Being on Hockey Night in Canada and facing a tough team like the Leafs going to inspire a lot of those players, I think.
Absolutely. And then Sunday, there's a whole slew of games. And I'm going to pick one that you may not have expected, Gil, before we get to your choice. But I'm going to look at the Sabres at Columbus because I want to keep an eye on Patrick Laine. He's got 6 goals and 4 assists in his last 5 games, including a hat trick against Chicago. And he's just such a fun player to watch. And up against maybe a weaker team like Buffalo, maybe he can turn it on again.
Yeah, yeah, he has been a lot of fun to watch, and Columbus also right now they need him and a lot more. They're on the outside looking in the playoff, and I like that as a sort of dark horse game to look at.
So what are you looking to watch on Sunday?
Minnesota, Edmonton, also, to me, a very good game. You got the new coaching situation in Edmonton and a team that's been hot. In Minnesota, one of the better teams in the league. So I like that matchup a lot. 8 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday.
Well, all of those games sound like a ton of fun, and we will be talking about those results next week on the show. Gil, you're going to be back Monday checking in on NHL teams with hosts from around the league. What else you got planned?
Islanders Canadiens on Sunday, so I gotta cover that, and looking forward to it. How about you? What do you have planned?
Flyers have a President's Day matinee against Carolina, which should be a pretty tough matchup. And the Flyers have been very frustrating on many levels, but their last two games, they played really well and just kind of collapsed at the end. So I'm really looking to see if the Flyers can put together a complete game. It might be a miracle if they do against a team like Carolina, but that is the hope, the wish, and the dream.
Well, let's see how they do, and got to get more consistency for both of our teams, unfortunately.
Right. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening to today's show. Of course, like I said, Gil will be back on Monday. We'll both be back next Friday to recap the week that was. We'll be looking ahead to next weekend's slate of games. I'm Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. Gil is on Twitter at IceWarsNYI_VSNYR. You made us your first listen today. Now make your next listen Locked On Bets. It's your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. Have a great weekend, everyone.